All right, hello everyone. I'm going to help you out with a drawing for Unit 2, Lecture 2, all about the long bone microstructure. We're going to look into Haversian systems. So to start, just make sure you have with you, if possible, some colors. It helps this image quite a bit. And so you don't have to have the same exact colors as me, but you're going to want a couple colors. So I'm going to use green, blue, red, purple, I'm going to use a black pen, and I'm going to use a yellow highlighter. Again, doesn't have to be exactly these colors, but it might be easier to follow along if you have these. You can use colored pencils, crayons, whatever you have available is great. So we are going to start off by labeling this. The long, should probably zoom in, long bone microstructure. And just as a reminder, we have two types of bone that make up the long bone. We have compact bone and we have spongy bone. And we're going to be focusing on the compact bone in this lecture. So what we're going to be looking at inside compact bone is like the functional units, the little pieces that are repeated over and over and over again to make this compact bone. So the functional unit. So these are called Haversian systems. Or they're also known as osteons. And we'll define these as the individual units that make up compact bone. Okay, so what you're going to want to do to start is actually just focus in on the bottom corner of your paper. So notice I'm going like way into the bottom. You can kind of tell like with my hole punches where I am working on my paper. So I'm going to be working like just above or just below, I don't know, right here. So here's my bottom hole punch. I'm just going to go a little bit above it. I'm still pretty far away from that next hole punch. So a small little picture in the corner. And then we're going to zoom in. So be in the bottom left-hand corner to draw this. So I'm going to have us draw it first. We're going to be drawing a longitudinal cut within a long bone. So I'll have you take a guess as to what part of the long bone we're looking at. So we want to do like a little U shape at the top. Honestly, I probably just made this way too thin, but it is what it is. So I will keep going. Then I'm going to have it move downward. Okay, so that's my best bet. I like if you took a long bone and you cut it longitudinally, what we would see. So hopefully you guessed this is the diaphysis of the bone. You can tell because we're in that, it's longer than it is shorter, so we're not in that epiphysis, which is the bulging piece. So I'm going to label this diaphysis of a long bone. And so we're zoomed out right here, like we are way zoomed out. Like if you were looking at the bones I have in my classroom, directly at them, we could still see this is still macrostructure. And so we're gonna zoom into this. But first, what we're going to do is we're gonna fill in that medullary cavity here. So in the medullary cavity, we have some yellow marrow, as we know, but we also have something else in there. You could kind of see it in the picture in the book before, kind of extending past the yellow marrow. So it's going to be in there as well. And this is blood vessels and nerves. And so we're going to draw those in here. So I'm going to start with my red and draw an artery. And I'll probably add in just like a little hole in the wall of the long bone. because this is where the artery is going to kind of connect in from like another portion of the body. So artery is blood coming from the heart. So right in here is where we're going to have an entrance into the bone with this artery, bringing blood to the bone. Because we have living parts of this bone, living cells here, and so to keep it alive, we're going to need nutrients and oxygen. So we do have blood vessels entering our bones. So we're going to come from the heart, and here comes an artery. And, okay, I just did this so poorly. It's okay. There we go. I don't know. Sorry, guys, I'm not the best drawer, but we can color that in red. And so our artery, bringing blood from the heart, oxygen and nutrients to keep those bone cells alive, it's going to branch in a bunch of different places. So add some branches in. It's going to branch all throughout the bone. Okay, we'll go down the bottom a little bit. Again, this is arteries, bringing oxygen and nutrients from the heart. I did not mean to go into the wall there. Okay, next we're going to use our blue color and we're going to add some veins. So we also need some blood to be leaving the bone, and it's going to be deoxygenated blood with the nutrients used up. We also know that in the red marrow of the bone there's blood cells that are being made, so we need a way for those to get in and out. So I'm going to draw a vein coming in, or leaving I should say, the bone right here as well, and it will extend kind of right alongside the artery. It's not perfect like this, but we'll draw it this way. And just kind of add some projections to your vein as well. And there we have it. So again, we are in the diaphysis of a long bone. We're way zoomed out. We have these giant blood vessels that are going to branch into smaller blood vessels within the walls of this bone right here. So right along here is where we have the compact bone surrounding that medullary cavity, surrounding that spongy bone. And the blood vessels are going to leak into those walls. And so we're going to zoom in on these walls here. We're going to see all the little pieces that make up that compact bone and make it so sturdy. So what I want you to do before we do that is add in, I'm going to use purple here, some nerves. So nerves are going to follow the same path, but there will be nerves here as well. So you can just add those in, and we'll label these along the bottom. So in here we're going to have nerves. In purple we have our arteries in red. And in blue we have our veins. Okay, so let's zoom in. We're going to go right up in this corner here so we get a cross section we can see from an aerial view and from a longitudinal view as well. So we're going to just draw this like dotted circle here to show we are zooming in on this corner, okay? So here's where we're going to blow it up. In all this space, we're going to make a nice big drawing, zooming way in on this compact bone. So I'm going to draw my little like zoom in arrows, or lines I should say. And we will zoom in. So you're first going to want to draw a diagonal line. With a hole in it. Like that. And then we're going to go straight on down. And we will also go like a little rainbow. Up and around. Okay, so how else could we make this look a little bit better? Maybe we want to add that in. Yeah, let's add the other side of the rainbow in. Okay, that works. Maybe we'll even go down here too. All right, so hopefully you can see that we just zoomed in right here. We're trying to zoom in on that piece. So we see the curve start, we see the piece going down. That's where we're working in. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to start by drawing our artery and our vein that are right here, leaking into the walls. So here they are. They ended at this wall here. Now we're going to leak them into the walls. And so I'm just going to start by drawing the artery And it's actually going to go up here. And then we'll extend it all the way down vertically. So we have lots of these all over. They're all connected. You can see this horizontal canal, and then we're going through a vertical canal right now. But they're all connected and intertwined. Lots of blood being moved around this compact bone because we have living cells in here that need to stay alive. They're going to have lots of jobs that we'll get into as we keep going, like building bone, breaking it down even. So that's what we have going on here. We're going to use our blue. We're going to extend our vein from right over here, right on into the compact bone, into the wall. So we'll have that come out as well. Okay, and we will leave it at that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take our black pen and we're going to draw the canal that these move through. So there is a canal, just like the medullary canal houses them in the diaphysis of the bone. There's little canals within the walls of this compact bone that house these blood vessels once they enter. So there's like pathways, tunnels for them to move through. So we have some horizontal canals and we have some vertical canals as well. So you can draw those right on in. And these canals are called haversian canals. So we'll label that down the bottom. Remember, we're looking at haversian systems, so these are haversian canals within a haversian system, or within an osteon. Haversian canal. And haversian canals just house blood vessels and nerves. So there's their function. Notice that there's a horizontal canal, and so these are called Volkmann's canals, and you have these in your notes, but these are horizontal canals that house blood vessels and nerves. So basically they just get a different name depending on if they're longitudinal or vertical versus horizontal. So if they're vertical, then we have haversian canal. If they're horizontal, they get the name Volkmann's canal. So maybe I'll label that right up here. Okay, so there's our Volkmann's canal. Next, we are going to add in some little more empty spaces. So we have our medullary cavity in empty space, we have our haversian canals, empty spaces, we have Volkmann's canals, empty spaces. Well, not empty spaces, they're eventually filled with something, but we're gonna add these little tiny empty spaces right around the edges of our haversian canals. So these are just little tiny holes circling these haversian canals. And these are called lacunae, or that's plural, or lacuna for singular. So I'm going to label one of my lacuna. I'll put an E in parentheses, L-A-C-U-N-A, parentheses, E. And these are just empty spaces. So I'm going to take my green and I'm going to fill these empty spaces with some bone cells called osteocytes. If you remember that root word, cyte, it means cell. So we saw that with keratinocytes and melanocytes. So these guys live inside these little lacuna. They each get their own one surrounding the haversian canals. Right close to that blood supply. And we are going to label these osteocytes. So extend that line pretty long. Osteocytes. Okay. And those are bone cells. Next, So we are going to continue on with our green. These bone cells, they do need to communicate with each other. They communicate about reproduction. If there's some cells that die, we need to reproduce some more, fill those lacunae. They're also going to produce communicate about what they build, which is the bone matrix, which is the part that makes this bone so strong. So how these cells communicate with each other is through these little antennae like looking things called canaliculi. Try saying these words. So lacunae have little antennae called canaliculi. And they're going to communicate with each other through these. So we have our osteocytes housed in our lacunae, surrounding our Haversian canals and our Volkmann's canals. And they have canaliculi to communicate. Okay, so let's label a canaliculi. Canaliculi. Oops, one I, I'm sorry. This is when this guy comes in handy. Canaliculi. So these are projections from osteocytes that allow for communication. So we'll just see if we can fit that. Projections allow for communication. Sorry, got a little messy. Projections from osteocytes that allow for communication. Okay? And so again, they're communicating to tell each other if they need to reproduce, but also to keep making more bone matrix if necessary, or to make bone matrix. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our yellow highlighter. We're going to create some bone matrix all around these lacunae and these osteocytes. The osteocytes will produce this once they are housed, and they're going to build this to fill in all the empty spaces, right? Unlike spongy bone, compact bone is very dense and very compact, so we fill those empty spaces with bone matrix. So next we're going to actually add a whole other layer. So I want you to say these words as you add them in. We have our lacunae. And maybe just draw a couple less so you don't have to do as many colorings. So our lacunae surrounding our Haversian canals. And in our lacunae we have osteocytes, which are bone cells. And these osteocytes live in the lacunae, and they communicate through their little antennae-like projections called canaliculi. What a weird word. It's like, can I lick your eye, almost, which is also a very strange thing to say. Okay, so once you're done drawing these canaliculi in, you can add another layer of bone matrix, right? So we're filling all empty spaces in this bone with bone matrix that the osteocytes have produced and communicated to each other about producing it using their canaliculi. So the reason we did 2 of these layers is because the layers have names. So let's first start by labeling in yellow our bone matrix, which you have some notes on. So we'll just leave it as bone matrix. You know, it's made up of inorganic and organic components. And then we're going to use our red, and we're just going to label a osteocyte with its canaliculi and its lacunae and the bone matrix it has produced. That is called a lamella. And more than one lamella is lamellae. So a lamella is one layer in a Haversian system. Okay, one layer in a Haversian system. So what we have drawn is a Haversian system. It also have probably a couple more layers surrounding it, but that's what we have drawn. So we have a Haversian system with 2 lamellae, 2 layers. So So what we're going to do next is we're going to move up top and we're going to draw one more Haversian system from an aerial view. So go ahead and draw a Haversian canal. And in that Haversian canal, we're going to draw our artery and our vein. And that's it, because we're not going vertically because we're looking at it from a top view. We're then going to add our lacunae. So say these as you draw them. Practice, practice, practice. So our lacunae surround the Haversian system. And in our lacunae, we have our osteocytes with their canaliculi communicating with each other to form bone matrix. And all together, we have created one lamellae surrounding our Haversian system. I want you to then draw another lamella. So here's our lacunae. They are filled with osteocytes, which communicate through their canaliculi to make bone matrix, which we have here. And now we have two lamellae drawn. I want you to add one more lamellae to this osteon, to this Haversian system. This is one Haversian system, this is another. Add one more lamellae, and then once you're done with that, add another Haversian system in here. Hopefully you're starting to see what we saw when we looked at bone in Unit 1, Lecture 2. We had all these pictures of bone as examples of connective tissue, and we saw all these circular layers with dark holes in the middle where our blood vessels were. So that's what we were looking at, is the compact bone from an aerial view. So keep drawing some more osteons or Haversian systems. At least have 2 full ones, each with 3 lamellae. I will be looking for that when I collect your notes to see that these are complete. Now think about this last piece, or this last little thing before I let you go, and that is layers create strength. Compact bones are strong, dense bones. Why? They have layers. Think about this. If I threw an onion at your face, which I would never ever do, then it would have really probably hurt. Like, onions are big and they are hard, you know? But what if I just threw a layer of an onion at your face, like a food fight? Like, that's not that bad, right? You know, it would barely hurt. It might, like, make your eyes cry a little bit, but a single layer of an onion, pretty, like, unsturdy by itself, pretty easy to break. But a whole onion with all those layers, think about how much stronger it is, and that is how compact bone works. Again, we have labeled the microstructure of the compact bone and the diaphysis of a long bone. So that's where we are looking, branching smaller and smaller and smaller. This is our smallest level we will get to. All right, keep drawing those Haversian systems. One more lamellae, one more Haversian system, and you are done.